Hello, welcome to this tutorial. We're going to cover using Scrapy to extract some structured data from a real estate property website called Craigslist. We're going to extract items such as link, name, price, longitude, latitude from the listings, and we're going to output them to a CSV file. So if that's of interest, keep watching. Okay, so we can see here the website that we will be attempting to extract the data from, newyork.craigslist.org. You can see that it has multiple thumbnail images with price, description, location, hood as they call it, neighborhood, and what we want to end up with is a structured list of that data. As always, that's the whole point of web scraping. How are we going to do it? We are going to be using Scrapy, and we are going to be going through approximately 3,000 items. So if that's of interest, keep watching. So before we look at any code as such, we will just go quickly through where you can find the documentation for this project. So I've compiled an explanation page on the redandgreen.co.uk website /scrapy-yield. The emphasis is on using yield several times in a method, and as the page scrolls down, you can see samples of the code with explanations of each method: start_requests, pass, and pass. If you go to page 2, you can see an explanation of pass detail, and main using feeds at the end to output to the CSV and then tidy it up. So if that's of interest, redandgreen.co.uk. Okay, so what does this video actually cover? Well, it covers using Scrapy. And Scrapy is a framework for crawling multiple pages. Let's just leave it at that. If you're not familiar with Scrapy, excellent documentation. You can run it with Python, and it works on Windows, Mac, Linux, and so on. So if you've got Scrapy installed, you'll also be able to run Scrapy shell, and we'll use that to test the selectors. The selectors pick out the bits of information that we need. We'll quickly cover CSS versus XPATH. I've already done that in a previous video, so I'll put a link up to that. Also, in this video, I'll be using item loader, and that's optional. Your data extraction, you could just output to a JSON file. You could do that however you want, but using the Scrapy framework, they do offer you the item loader, and I've stuck with that for this purpose. So if you're ready to start looking at how we're going to extract the data, let's begin. Okay, so as with most property websites, you'll want to typically collect the property name, the location, the price, the area, and maybe even the geodata. So from the main listing page, we've already got a good idea of what we are able to extract and how many items we'll be extracting. So if we're ready, let's have a look at that. So we know that we've got approximately, obviously it could change by the day. So we've got 3,000 items or properties. If we then go into the source, or if we inspect one element, let's choose the first one, inspect element, and then first thing we want to do is filter it down as far as looking down at this kind of level. So if we inspect element, hover over there, we want to just, you kind of move the mouse until you reach the level that shows you all of the detail, and then you'll find the tag. So here I can see that that is probably the tag that we will need to use. That will identify each and every, I want to call it advert, but each and every individual listing. So I'm going to copy that, and then with that information, and we also know it's P, so that will help us uniquely identify each advert to iterate through. So this will become a little bit repetitive, and each time what we'll be doing is we'll be inspecting. So you right click, I'm using Firefox, but many people use Chrome. If you use Chrome, there's a useful tool called Selector Gadget, which uniquely identifies the CSS for what you're inspecting. So here again, if I right click, inspect element, and here is kind of a little bit of trial and error. You scroll through the HTML and then you filter down as far as the item that you want to extract the data from. So just scroll there. For instance, if we want to extract the link, which we will do, because we know that the link takes us to the details page, and invariably you'll need to do that to go down to extract more information about the particular listing. So here, for instance, we can see a class equals result title HDR link. So I'm going to right click. You can, if you copy, you can copy the HTML, the CSS path, or the XPATH. I prefer to copy, for instance, if we copy the init HTML and then paste that, and then right click and copy outer HTML, there we go. So we can see what we get. That's basically the human friendly version, and that is the full HTML that we will be picking apart, shall we say. So once we have that information, we can either form our own CSS selector because we have the class, so we could do a colon colon attdr, or we can form an XPATH, and I'll show you how to do that next. So let's just collect one more piece of information, and then we'll go to creating some selectors. So what else do we need to extract? Price maybe. So if we right click over $3,100, inspect element, and there we can see span class equals result dash price 3,100. So again, if we do copy, we'll do copy inner HTML, and then if we go back and we will do right click, copy outer HTML, and that will pick out the code that we actually, the HTML that we need to use to create our selector. That's all you need to create your selector, to pick out the price. And okay, one more, and then we'll get on with it. So okay, date, we probably need the date that it was listed at. So if we do inspect element, and there we can see, we've got time. So copy, inner HTML, bring up Notepad, June 3, and then if we copy outer HTML, there we go. So just to summarize this, we've got, this will end up being called the link. This will obviously end up being the price, and this will be the date, because we're only handling one date. If we were looking at date listed or date modified or something, then we'd have to make those titles a bit more specific. But so we have link, price, date, and already we've got 3 of the columns for our final CSV. So next we'll look at creating the selectors, and then we'll continue. Right, that's better. We have a brew. So yes, what we need to do now is start building our selectors. What is a selector? A selector is a line of code which will tell Scrapy what to pick out and return as useful information as text that we can then store in our fields, which will then appear in our CSV. So if you want a column in your final CSV called price, then we need to make a selector that will go and extract the price data from the HTML which Scrapy gets for us. So if you've got Scrapy installed on your machine, you can have it on Windows, Linux, Mac, OS X, whatever flavor you prefer. So I won't go into the details of installing Scrapy. It's kind of pip install Scrapy, but yeah, let's just fire up Scrapy space shell, enter, and you have to type it properly. That is one of the prerequisites. And once you've typed it properly, you will get a screen which looks very much like this. Yours might be black and white, white on black, or whatever. I'm just rocking the green and black look today. So then we want to go to the actual URL of the entire site. So I'm actually going to paste that in because I don't want to make a mistake and mess up this video. So we want to go to newyork.craigslist.org/d/real-estate, and then press enter, and you should hopefully get a response 200, and there you can see it, 200. That is the success code. And now it's got all of the HTML for this page in memory, and to test our selectors prior to actually writing our code in Python, we want to test our selectors. So if you're ready to see that, let's begin. Okay, so just to ease into this gently, let's begin with, let's just test a price selector, shall we? So the 2 pieces of information we need to know is, or are, that it's a span tag and the class. That's all we need so far. So if you would like to see that, let's begin. The format to create a selector is always response dot, and then depending, you've got a choice. You can use CSS or you can use XPATH. Both will work. I'm going to use XPATH, and then without going into the full details of the DOM, etc., the document object model, first thing you need to do is quote. Now whatever quote you use here, you must use the opposite when you're putting some quotes around the class. So the format is parentheses, then quote, which you come across that lots in programming. Then we need to, the format is 2 forward slashes and then the tag. So the tag name, which is span. Then square bracket, @ symbol, and then the class equals, and then we want result dash price, close the square brackets, and because we want to pick out the text, because the price was just text, $3,100, then it's / text and then a pair of parentheses, and then we close the quotes, close the opening parentheses, and then we do get. And would you believe that? The price since we did it earlier has changed from 3,100 to 3,200. I'm pretty sure that's the same advert. We've got the first, it may not be, it doesn't matter. Anyway, so what you've seen here is response.xpath, which you will need to use that for every single selector you write. Open parentheses, single quote, /, then that may change. So if it was a div, I've got it highlighted in green there. Instead of span, you would put div. Class, you always really want to use class name where possible. And then the class name in double quotes, close the square brackets, and then most of the time you'll want to be extracting the text because that's what you want to appear in your final output CSV or JSON file or database. And so instead of text, you may wish to extract the href. So instead of text, it would say href. And then get. You may, on some tutorials, you may see extract and extract all. So extract has been replaced by, extract and extract first. So extract first has been replaced by get, and extract has been replaced by get all. So if I put get all there we go. That's extracted all of the prices from the HTML that was returned for the first page of that Craigslist listings page. So get all and get. So get gets just one, get all gets all. And if I'd done extract, if I did extract, we would have got all of them. And if I'd done, I think, is it an underscore first? I don't use it anymore. Yeah, so extract underscore first. So if you see a tutorial or Stack Overflow, don't worry if it's extract or extract first. going forwards, it's probably best to start using get and get all. I always use get and get all, but there's no problem in using extract or extract underscore first. Okay, so we now have a selector to extract the price information. And next, let's look at another one. So we'll look at how to extract the link. So far we've not written a single line of Python code, and this is something you could perhaps ease into really. So practicing the selectors, if that's not anything you've done before, have a go at it in Scrapy shell. And response.XPATH. Now we're going to go and try and attempt to extract the link to what is the detail listing of the property. So instead of using span, the tag here is a. Then we use at class equals. So here at class is the same as what we've just used there for the extracting the price. And if you remember on our reconnaissance or on our fact-finding adventures, we found that the href was available to us, and it was a class called result-title space hdr link. So what we're always trying to do is uniquely identify the information on the page, and close the square brackets again. And as I alluded to, well actually no, we want to get the text of the link, so let's just do text here, because this will form part of what we want to have in our final CSV file. And enter. Right, so yeah, there's two things. We have the text of the link, and then we will then go and extract the href. So the text of the link will form, or could form, the description that you want to put in column B or C. So now we've done that, the next bit will be fairly straightforward, because what we do is, instead of collecting the text, we just change this to at href, press enter, and we get an error. So why is that? Invalid expression. Well, let me just find out what's going on here. And that is error between chair and keyboard. I've left in the parentheses after the href. When you're collecting the so with text you need the pair of parentheses after. With an href you just have at href, and there you go. Apologies for that. So as you can see, it's actually openable, open link. And as you can see, it is actually the full link. So it's not just the shortened path, it's the full link that you will need to use as a link to go to find out the details. So I think we'll do one more. I'll quickly do time. So if you remember, sorry about this, just need to get the notepad file. Disappear. If you remember, the time was available from that. So again, time was the tag. There you go, see that better. Time. and the class was result-date. So back to Scrapy shell, response.XPATH, always that, and then open parentheses, single quote, double forward slash, and the tag will be time. Open a square bracket as always, then, so the square brackets are called predicates. If you want to read up on those, that's what you will need to look up, predicates. Class equals, what are we getting? Date, yes. Class equals result-date. And we just want the text, so you'll start to get familiar with this, / text, pair of parentheses, single quote, then close the whole shooting match, and then get, and then just the pair of parentheses after get. And what have I done there? Square brackets. And then we see June 4. So the date listed was June 4th. Again, if you did get all, all of those were listed on June the 4th. What a lot of properties. So there we go. So to conclude, we've just gone through and we've tested the XPaths for time, the href, so the link, the text of the link, so the description, and we also extracted the price. So price, description, link, text. So hopefully that's given you enough of an intro to creating the selectors and testing them in Scrapy shell. And next we'll start writing the code. Okay, so I'm going to try and demonstrate the correct or the official way of doing this here. So sudo virtualenv, and we'll call it craigslistdemo. What this is doing is it's making a self-contained project for this instance, where it's all the Python modules and everything can be used, and I can install things without actually modifying the main instance of Python on this machine. So if we cd to Craigslist, and if we do source activate, there we go. And if you see there, we've got Craigslist demo before the username and the host name. So okay, we've got a virtual environment running now, which is good practice. And here you can see I'm running Python 3.8. So to do all of this project, you will need Python 3.8 preferably, and you will need Scrapy. So an operating system plus Python plus Scrapy, so those three things to start with, and then you will need to install some libraries as required. So the first thing we need to do is do Scrapy start project Craigslist, isn't it? There's an S in it. Craigslist, and we will call it Craigslist Scrape. So this is going to be the name of the project, and this is kind of the top level, which will represent everything that Scrapy will reference. And why is that not? Oh, sudo. So if you're on a Linux machine, you'll often need to use sudo to give or substitute user. So we actually get permissions. And here you can see, let's just scroll down. You can see here, new Scrapy project using template directory created in. You can start your first spider with cd Craigslist scrape, and you can generate the spider with Scrapy gen spider example.com. I don't tend to use that, but that is an option. So if we do ls now, we just see what folders it's created for us. We need to go to craigslist.scrape. So inside, this is the folder the directory which Scrapy's created. And inside that it creates another directory with the same name. And then inside that you can see, if I do, there we go. You can see it's created init.py, items, middlewares, pipelines, settings, and spiders directory. That's where, if you have multiple spiders, each one of your spiders will be inside that directory. And or any of those spiders, so if we were writing Craigslist Spain, Craigslist Germany, Craigslist Portugal, you'd have 3 spiders, and each one of those spiders could use the same settings file, the same pipelines, the same middlewares, the same items.py if you're using items, which we will. So cd spiders, and inside there you'll see nothing at the moment. So this is where we want to actually create our spider. So I'm actually going to do start atom. So whatever your favorite text editor is, or you could do it from Micro or Nano or whatever you wish. VS Code. And here we go. And it's actually creating a new file, and what I'll just do is add project folder. So with Atom, add a project folder, and we want to home Craigslist demo, and add that. And there you can see the bin file which was created by a virtual environment. Inside there we've got Craigslist scrape, which was what was created when we create with Scrapy. And then inside here you will see, actually what I may do is just remove project folder, and I'm just going to, if you do add project folder, and then you can kind of go down to the level that you want. So if we go down a couple of levels, this will make it a lot tidier. So there we can see we're actually down at the correct level with items, middlewares, pipeline settings, and the spiders directory. So there we go, that's neater. So we're ready to start writing some code. So yeah, get yourself a cup of tea or a cup of coffee or a can of beer, and we'll begin. Okay, so I've just put in the title of the project, a doc string describing what it does, and I had a little issue saving it within Atom, and let's just clear that. What I had to do was sudo chown -r, then username : sudo, and then the period character. once I'd done that and applied it, I was then able to Control S and save the project. So yeah, just a little tip there if Atom or your editor doesn't actually allow you to save if you get permission denied. So let's actually start writing our first line of code. I know it's been a wait, but I've tried to be as detailed as possible. I don't want to skip over anything and leave you confused. So import Scrapy, that gives us access to all of, why has that changed it to capitals? That's bad. I don't want to leave you having to scratch your head or go off and have to research other things to get any of this to work. I want this to work in its entirety for you. And we're importing from scrapy.loader, import item loader. And this is what allows us to use items file. Now, you could get away with just creating a JSON dictionary, but I'm trying to do this as kind of best practice. I realise that in the real world you may wish to do things a little bit differently, but this is kind of best practice and it's what you'll see in the documentation. So I just thought I'd use this as the example, and then once you know the proper way or the official way, then you can do your own thing. So from Scrapy, what we need to do next is import Scrapy crawler and then import the crawler process. Now that's what allows us to run the script as a standard Python file, and it would allow you to just run it with Control B or F5 or whatever the command is to run it from VS Code or your IDE. And you'll see that at the end, what the syntax you'll see at the end will be something a bit like create the instance, process equals crawler process, process.crawl, and then the class name, and then process.start. Well, that's the generic way. I probably will be using my own names there, but okay, so now we need to do right, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to be moving the items py file. I'm going to be moving it to the same level as the spider. It's just something that I do to save any issues when you run it. It's a kind of a little bit of a modification, but just bear with me on this. From items, so you may sometimes see, if you're referencing it, we'll leave it in, from .items, so it's telling it it's in the folder, the directory above, import Craigslist. Let's just see. So Scrapy Framework created an items file for us and it called it Craigslist. So the class name of the class in the items file is called that. So we need to copy that, and we then, sorry, dropped the mic like a boss. Not quite like a boss, but dropped the mic like an idiot. So we need to use that same name. So we're importing from items, we're importing that class. Okay, so that's all of our imports, and yeah, next let's create the class. So we'll be creating one class that uses scrapy.spider object that is an instance of scrapy.spider. So I hope you're okay with us so far. Any questions, put them in the comments. I hope the sound's okay as well. One day, if I ever make any money from this channel, I'll buy a proper microphone. We've imported the packages, so we've imported Scrapy. One other thing I think I'll do, because I will be saving this output to a file, so I will import OS, import operating system, and that will allow me to check if the output file exists. If it does, I'll remove it, and then I'll create it again from scratch. So I don't want to keep pending data, especially when you get 3,000 results. You don't want to keep adding more and more to that. So right, imported all the packages. Let's do some code and write the class, and we're going to call it real estate spider, and we are going to create it as a subclass of scrapy.spider, and whatever you're doing in Scrapy with your spider, writing a spider, it will always begin with the class, then the name that you choose to give to the class, the class, and then scrapy.spider. Sometimes you will see crawler. Crawler is when you go off and extract as many links as you wish. We're not extracting loads of links. We know what links we're dealing with here today, so we're using scrapy.spider rather than the crawler. The crawler is when you have, let's say, lots of unknown links. The only unknown link we have today really will be links past page 1, but we know what they'll be because we'll handle those by identifying the next button. But yeah, that's to come. So let's get on with it. Name. This is the name of the spider that Scrapy uses. So this is the name that you will use when you actually call it from the command line, which I'm hoping we won't do that. So real estate, and the format for this is always lowercase. So yeah, that's done. Next, we need to, as always with Scrapy, you need to specify your start URLs. So you need to tell it what you actually want to be looking at to begin with. So I've already, as you know, I've already got that. So let's copy and paste that, and we will put it inside the single quotes. Paste. I'll just check that. HTTPS New York craigslist.org/d real estate search REA. Good. Okay. Happy with that. Okay. So next thing we want to consider, we want to consider the output file. So what do we want to call the output file? And we're going to be using feed. So I'm not actually going to write any code to open a file for output and then all that stuff. So I just want to try OS. If this file already exists, we want to get rid of it. If it doesn't exist, we'll get in it. So remove it if it exists. If it doesn't exist, if you get an OS error, then just carry on. because if we don't get an error, it means it didn't exist, which is good. Well, it's good if we're at the start of the program. If we're at the end of the program, it's not as good. So, okay, so next thing is I'm going to be needing to use two variables which will allow me to pass data between between pages, so to speak. So thinking ahead, I'm going to be having a collection of data which I've passed from the main advert, but I need to be getting the geodata as well. So if you see my previous video, I've already identified that the geodata is available from the details page. I'm calling this the details page. Throughout this video, I'll refer to it as the details page. So view page source, and I've already established that some geodata is available from the details page. So longitude, latitude, I think. So we want to, when this class initialized is instantiated, we will then say self.lat equals empty quotes. You won't see this on all Scrapy projects, so I think that's why it's quite interesting to show it here. What I'm able to do by doing this is to pass the data between, I'm passing it between two functions, because obviously when one function closes, it clears that data. So to make the data available between two functions or methods, then we need to store it as a variable, and when we're using a class, it's self dot, because we've initialized. Next, we need to do now start requests. Sorry, my typing's not good, is it? I might go and get some more caffeine in a minute, but start requests, it's implicit, and if you don't write it, it happens anyway. But just for completeness, I want to show it here, as this is kind of a tutorial. Scrapy.request. And then what it does is it goes off to, now it doesn't actually have to go off, you could have many start URLs. So there we go. Scrapy request. It's going to go to this page. Once it's gone to this page, it then, just to really make it kind of obvious, or hopefully obvious, it goes to this page and then it calls back to the next method, which is self.pass. So start requests is a built-in method of Scrapy framework, and then self.pass. You don't have to go to self.pass next, but it's kind of the convention, and I want to kind of stick with that for this. So then we say pass and response. So what that's doing is creating it's using the response from this page, which is then being passed into pass, and pass then uses the response, and this is where it starts getting interesting. So I think we'll pause it here and then we will really dive into the nitty-gritty of it. Okay, so just thinking ahead a bit, what I'm going to do, and this is, you'll see this quite often, is pass. I'm actually just going to create the functions because I've already in my head got an idea of the functions, the methods that I will be using. So I know I'll be using pass, which will effectively handle the main details and it will write the data to the items file. I also know that I'm going to be needing a second method which will it will be handling the geodata, the extraction of the geodata, and populating or filling these two variables with longitude, latitude, and colon, yeah, pass, and then I think that's the grand total of the methods that I'll be needing. And what we'll do next is, you won't always see this on tutorials or on documentation for Scrapy, but obviously it's something you'll see across many Python tutorials and projects. So double underscore dunder, as you may also hear it called or written. So if this is main, so i.e. if this code is not being imported, if this is being run as the main file, create instance called, we'll call it CL, as in Craigslist. I'm just showing you my thinking here. CL equals, it's case sensitive, isn't it? Crawler process. Now, this is a kind of a new way of handling outputting to a file that I've recently come across. You may not see it actually in the Scrapy documentation that you look at, but I've tested it and it works, so that's good enough for me. I believe it's the new way of outputting. So what we want to be doing is we need to be telling it, where we used to do feeds format and feeds URI, now we're just going to say the name of the output file, results.csv. Now that could be JSON if you want, or XML, I believe. Not that I've used that. The format is CSV, so we tell it the file name, but also we have to tell it the format. And once we've done that, you might have previously seen feed and feed format. You might have seen that previously as custom settings listed up here. I'm going to stick with this. We'll see what happens when we run it. I have tested it previously, so I know it does work, and I believe it's the new way, the new recommended way. So I just want to kind of get used to using that, if that's what's going to be appearing in tutorials on Stack Overflow, etc. going forward. So I think that's the basic structure of the code. So I'm going to save that, pause it, get a drink, and yeah, back for some more fun in a second. So we can see from the main page that there are 120 property listings per page. There we go, 120. 120 out of 3000. So 100, if we scroll down, that looks about 120, doesn't it? Yep. So for each one of those thumbnails, we will be collecting, as you've seen already, we're collecting the date, the price, the description, the link, but we can't extract the geodata from that thumbnail or that listing, the result info. So we're gonna have to go to the detail page, which is what you get when you click on the thumbnail, and we're going to have to extract the geodata from the source which we've already looked at. So for each one, we're going to go to the detail, get that, and pass that back along with the price, the time, the description, so on. We're going to pass all of that to the item loader, which will then fill the containers in the items.py file. And then we'll do that for 120 times on this page until we've run out of thumbnails, and then that for loop will finish, and we will then check if there is a next button, which there will be, until we've done that approximately 25 times, and eventually when we get to the last page there won't be a next button, and that's when the code will finish, and then the feed will export it all to the CSV file. So that's the logic. Thumbnail, go across, get the detail, then come back, do the next thumbnail, do that again, next thumbnail, 120 times, and then go to the next page and do it 120 times more. So when we run Scrapy, we'll be expecting to see somewhere, as it's flashing up on the screen, it will go from 120, 240, 360, 480 and so on. So let's have a look at how we are going to start writing the code. And first thing we want to be doing, I believe, is we need to start a for loop to loop through all the ads in the page. Now, how can we identify all of the adverts on the page? Well, we need to say something. Well, first off, we need to identify how we can pick out with a selector all of the adverts. So if you're ready, let's begin. We need to say all ads equals response.xpath, and if you remember earlier we said, let's do single quotes there, we also need to do that period there because otherwise it will get too much. I'm not going to go into what that does. It identifies the level within the DOM model, and it's that node. That's a whole subject in itself. So yeah, excuse me if I gloss over that. Just suffice now to know that we need it. If you don't put it, you end up with some unexpected results. At class equals, and then no, it was a P tag, wasn't it? P at class equals, and then result dash info. Put all of that in quotes. and then close with a single quote. Okay, that's good. So we need to pick out everything that has a p tag and the class is called result-info. So that response, which should be 120 items, 120 results, will then be assigned to this variable, and then we will say for, and then we'll create, we'll call it ads, in all ads, that's it, that's created our loop. So what do we want to do 120 times per page? Well, we want to, let's just put go get geodata, and what else? We need to, before we get the geodata, we need to get details link. So once we've got the details link, we then have the link that we can go to get the geodata. And then we will come back and we will, what will we do? We will populate all of our items containers with the information from the results and the details. So that is where we will do the loader. Once we've loaded all the information into the containers for that item, including the geodata, including the price, the description, etc., we will then need to identify the next page. So nav next page, and what do we want? If we just think ahead, what do we want the pass detail to do? Pass detail, we need to set variables to response from long and lat. With that, we will just be doing two lines. We'll just say self.lon equals response.xpath, blah, 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 self.lat. Once those two have been set, that's done with, that's finished. And when we're going to be using yield here, so once that's done, then it will come back into pass and resume. This logic takes a little bit of getting your head around because it's not the typical logic that you would use with Scrapy. As I've described, it's because we're extracting the majority of the information from the actual thumbnail of the listing. Okay. So I think I've put it off long enough. Let's go get the details link. So we'll create a variable called details underscore link. And what will that be? So because we're going to iterate through all of the ads. So if I'd called that I for I in all ads, it would be I. So ads, for each one of these iterations, we will be getting the XPATH, and we want the link. So again, single quote, the period character, at class square bracket concentrate. It's it's an href, and we want at class equals result dash title hdr link. You saw me extracting these earlier in the video. We tested these in Scrapy shell, if you remember. And then we want at href, and remember not to put the two brackets around. You only use that with text. And then we want to get, so this is getting one, it's not getting all, because we're already inside the loop, so we only want to get the details link for one item. That's why we use get. If you were using extract, you would do extract underscore first. Okay, so we've got the details link. Now we need to go and get the geodata. So the geodata being longitude and latitude coordinates. Right, this is where the fun begins. So we need to say yield response.follow. You may see yield scrapy.request, but if you use follow, it saves you doing URL join. CodeMonkey King showed me this, which was really cool. Details underscore link, and then callback equals self dot pass underscore detail. So this is the method that we need to go to next, and as you can see, pass underscore detail. We then drop down here, and here we will be extracting the geodata. So we will say self dot, let's do it in alphabetical order, lat first. Longitude and latitude, why do you say long first? I don't know. Self dot lat equals, I know why, because we're going to need to use indexes to identify them in a minute. Long equals, again, response.xpath. Starting to get the swing of this now. Right, I've not used the period character there, the period symbol there. I didn't need it. The best way to, you can either read lots and lots about the DOM document object model, or you can just experiment by putting in the period character and seeing what happens when you do and don't use it. If you find you're getting too many results, try putting in the period character. It kind of stops you getting all of the results at that same level. It just pins it down to one. But here we are just getting one anyway, so meta at name. We need to, yeah, so it's not a span or anything, it's meta. And then, equals geo dot position, which was what it was called. And then also, I had to look this up, but you need to use content to actually get the data out of it. And dot get, And then we need to split it because we will be getting, if we just go back to the page, I'll show you. If we go into the details and we view the source, let me zoom in on that a bit for you. There we go. So the meta, that's the tag. Then we want the content, which we've just typed into the selector. Now, as it stands, we will be getting all of that, which is a load of numbers, then a semicolon and some more numbers, which you could just extract that and dump all that into one column, but it's neater to get them separately. So to separate them out, we will be saying dot split. And how are we going to split? We're going to split it where the semicolon appears, and now we'll have two items in the list. We will get the first item for the longitude, and if anybody's into geography, they might tell me I've got these ran the wrong way, but from a code point of view, that's fairly trivial to fix. This is more about working out the logic and writing Scrapy code, which is, after all, what we are in the business of. Actually, I'm just going to copy and paste all that. It's so much typing, and there we go. So I have tested these in Scrapy shell already, and they worked. Just to show you, let's test it. Right, let's go and find the advert. And let's go and get that. That's the URL. We bring up Scrapy shell. And let's do scrape. That's so much. There we go. Clear. Right. Scrapy shell. And paste. And then go back to start and type fetch. Make sure we put the start of it in quotes. There we go, so we've got 200. Now, what we want to do is extract let's just do that for now. We'll get all of the data. There we go. So I did take the liberty of testing this earlier. So we've got longitude, latitude separated by a semicolon. So that's where I put the dot split semicolon. What would that give me? Yeah, that's turned it into a list. Once it's in list, we can then isolate each part. So there we go, the 40.67 and then 73.81, so on. So we've proved that the selectors are good and they're usable. And okay, that's good. And next we don't need to return or yield anything. That just runs. So for every single thumbnail on the first page, that will be getting called from within the for loop. So it'll be getting called there. Once that's done, those variables are loaded. We can then return and resume after the yield. And you know what? I think it's time to do the loader code. So just going to pause then, and we'll be back to do that. Okay, so You may have seen, I've actually done this already, and we've covered this in some previous videos. So just to keep this sort of short and sweet, I'm actually going to paste in the loader code. So the loader is the item loader, and it's some code which transfers all of the variables into, or via the, I think it's the pipeline, which then gives you the option of handling with processors. What it really does is it gives you some containers, and it saves you having to write a dictionary yourself. So let's paste that in. I just need to tidy that backspace. And just, as you can see, I'm cheating slightly because I have already done part of this in a previous video. So yeah, that, you see where I've highlighted Craigslist's scrape item needs to match the name of your class here. And also, if you have been watching my previous videos, you will know that I've already written the items.py file. And in actual fact, what I will do is just to keep it all consistent, I'm just going to paste in my ASCII logo. Import Scrapy. We've created the class scrapy.item. So actually Scrapy generated all this for us, and all we need to do is, as you see, name equals Scrapy field. So the name is what this will be what the column is called in your output CSV file. And I have already written this, and I know that I want the date, title, price, HUD, link, miscellaneous. Miscellaneous I don't think I need to use really, but I'm just going to put it in there just as a optional field for the future. And there you go. That is all there is to it. It's a bit like creating a header row if you use CSV Dix Writer. So each one of these is the title of a column in your final CSV. So these are very important because that is what we are in the business of collecting. So yeah, enough about that. Let's just save it as well. Why is, excuse me, I'll just fix that. In fact, I will let you see how I fixed that. What I will need to do is go up one level and run that same command again. It's to do with permissions, and it's a Linux feature, should we say. Right, let's try it again. Save items. Yeah, Control S, I've saved it, okay. For anybody wondering what I did there, I'm changing the owner, and it's doing it recursively, and I'm doing it for everything at this level. So when I did it earlier, it was only doing it on files within Spider, but now I've done it within that entire directory here. Sudo chown -r, then your username, then colon, then sudo, space, and then period character. So there we go. That was a little bit of a digression, which wasn't planning on, but there we go. Okay, I'll just talk through this. So loader equals item loader. This is, you'll always have to do this if you're using items and you want to yield to load item afterwards. And there is another way of using loader, but this is the proper way, or the official way, and this allows you to use item processors. So loader, we create an object which is it references, so item is the name of the class in the items.py file. You could have several classes inside the items.py file. That's why you need to identify which one you want to use. The selector, because we're inside a for loop, we need to say what our selector is. So adds there. And response is response. If you were, I don't know, if you were calling it res throughout your project, you'd be calling that res, like that. But we're not. So for each one of your column names, i.e. for each piece of information we want to extract from for every property, that's what we call it. So this, what we have here, needs to match what we have here. Okay, so each one of these selectors is the same as what we identified earlier. So you'll remember span at class equals result dash price / text. The only difference here is that we do not need to use get, and that's because we're using loader.add XPATH. So we will use that for the information that we are extracting from. We're using the XPATH to get the information from the main listings page, and we're actually going to add as values, because we're not going to be able to extract them as XPaths. We're going to be, the values have already been passed from parse detail, which we ran up here. So you'll see later on that it does work. And yeah, that's the loader. So the loader you may have already seen on previous videos. You don't have to use a loader. You can just create a JSON dictionary yourself, and that would also store the values, and that would be equally fine. A good reason to use the loader with the items.py file is if, as I say, if you're using creating multiple spiders that use common fields. So if we were scraping Craigslist Italy, Craigslist Spain, Craigslist USA, and we wanted to stick to a standard format with items, we could then use that. And the containers, it's recommended by Scrapy. So I'm showing you the official way. Don't have to use it. You can go and try using JSON dictionary yourself, and there's nothing wrong with that at all, and it works very well. And if you're kind of a minimalist outlook like I am, and I know Maxim Code Monkey King is also, I think there's very good reasons to write your own dictionary and not do all this. It depends if you're doing a one-time scraper or if you're doing lots of spiders that use the same common fields. Anyway, next page. Let's handle the next page. And you may have already seen this in a previous video. I'm just going to copy and paste all that in because you've seen it in a previous video. It is very common syntax, which we create a variable called next page, and what it is it's the XPath of the next button. So the next button has a class called button next, and then we want to get the href of that button. And so on page 1, the href of that button will say go to page 2, and on page 2 the href will say go to page 3, and so on. And then so all of that we will then be setting. Notice we're back to using response.xpath again. We're not, the loader was specific to populating our items.py file. We've gone past that now, so we've collected the geodata down here. We've gone back up to resumed. we're adding all of the data to the items.py. We've done all that, and we've done that throughout the loop, which has happened 120 times. So once we've done that 120 times on page 1, we then next need to find page 2 to go to. So that will be the URL for page 2, because we've got it from here. And let me just I'll just demonstrate that as well. If we go back to Scrapy shell and see if it's still in here. No, it's not. Let's just bear with me. If we go back here, I'm just going to get that the main URL, paste that, fetch. You'll get very familiar with using Scrapy shell. So there we go, 200 response, and now I'm just going to get the code that I'd already used, response.XPATH. So we're looking for the link hidden behind the next button, and that's what it returns. So it returns s equals 120. That means start at result 120, or start from 120. Presumably it went from 0 to 119, so 120 will be the first result on the second page, so it knows to redo a new search and go from 120 onwards. And because we're using response.follow, we don't need to mess about and use URL join, so that's really good. And I think we're getting close to testing it now, so I'm just going to pause that, save it, and we'll come back and start some testing. Okay, so this is the moment of truth is nearly upon us. We will need to just close. Right, craigslistdemo.py. I think we've got everything we need. OS, Scrapy, item loader, crawler process. Right, yeah, items I mentioned earlier. That should pick out items from the folder above. So what we've written lives in here. Items resides up here. Let's run it, and I think if we get any issues, the issues are likely to be with that. So cd spiders. Right, now the whole point of using crawler process was so that we could run our code using Python 3 rather than having to use the Scrapy syntax. And let's run it. I don't think it'll work first time. If it does, then that'll be a bit of a surprise. OS error. Okay. Try. Colon there. The colon, and the colon goes at the end. Right, let's try again. I could have edited this out, but right, okay. We've got, as anticipated, we've got the issue with items. Let's try and fix that. I saw another way of doing this, which was Craig is, you have the project name. You're probably thinking he can write all this, but then he can't even import a module, which, so project name, I think it's Craigslist Scrape. If it's not, then it'll be Craigslist Demo. Okay, let's try Craigslist Demo. If not, then I'll do my usual trick, which is just to move the items file. This is what happens when you start using a framework. You have to kind of abide by their rules, and right. So yeah, this is the issue I always run into, and what I usually end up doing is this, and what I'm going to do is move my spider out of the spiders directory. And move it up one level. So now it is sitting at the same level as the items.py. I think this may be just something, this is just something which is specific to using the crawler process, but this is my workaround. I don't know if it's the correct way, but I have found it to work. No. I need to go up a level. So this is why I thought I'd leave this in. I'd let you see how I go about using the whole Scrapy framework with items.py, and still getting it to run using sudo python 3 rather than the official Scrapy syntax. Again, as I say, I could have left this out, but I think it's interesting to see how I go about. Right, so that's good. The items.py is working okay. Okay, so line 36, we've got an issue with result-info, which, if I bring up my, if you remember back this far, this is what is giving us an error. So let's go back into the code, line 36. I don't straight away see anything wrong with that. Is it because, I think it's, I didn't need to use the period there. The period, it singles things out. Whereas here, we want everything at that level. So with the period, it picks out one. Without the period, it picks out all. And we want everything that has the class name result info. So go back. I hope you're still interested in this, and I'm not boring you just yet. But if you want to learn, sometimes you just have to see people troubleshooting as well, rather than just okay, why is that still not working? I'll just scroll up a bit as well. Why is that? Did I put the colon at the end? No, I don't need it on there. All ads equal response.XPATH quote // at class equals result dash info square bracket close. You must think I'm stupid, and you might be close to the truth. Right, response, spell response correctly. Note to self. Right, run it again. What are we expecting to see? Yeah, so URL can't be none. Okay. So this is a issue with URL can't be none. Pass line for. Okay, URL equals details link. Let's just check that then. URL equals details. So hopefully you're just seeing how to go about. Right. The URL so next page equals response.xpath. We've proved that that works. If there's a next page, response.follow URL equals next page callback equals self.pass. Just check that again. Right, I'm going to pause that, and then I'll come back once I've fixed it, and then I'll tell you what the fix was. Okay, so I identified a couple of issues with this. The observant amongst you may have noticed there was a typo down here, but the main thing was, which whilst I was talking, I was wondering. I'd actually called the field here, I'd called it details underscore link. No. Yes, I'd called it details underscore link here, but in items, I'd still, for some reason, probably from earlier on when I was writing it, I'd still had it called link. Now, whatever you have here must match what you are calling it here with your loader. So create all your field names, column names, whatever you want to call them, column names. Your column names here need to match with what you are calling your Scrapy field names, because to all intents and purposes the data from those column names is being passed through here on its way to your final output CSV. Now you can see there, if you're observant, you can see I have a results.csv, and the reason is because it has successfully run when I tested it just now. So if you're ready to see what it looks like if you want to see what a Scrapy, a customized Scrapy spider looks like when it's running, and bear in mind that I've used crawler process here. This isn't, I know I said I was sticking to the textbook, but yeah, what we're going to do here is run the spider using sudo python 3 craigslist spider.py, and we're going to do that because it's already using feed, so we can tell it where to store the output file, and I just find it is neater and it's self-contained, and if you watch Code Monkey King, he also does that. He'll use crawler process, and you can run your spider just like a normal Python file. So without further ado, let's get ready to run it, shall we? I thought I would let's run the spider, and I know when I first started, what is it doing? There we go. It's taken a while to get going. I know when I first started using Scrapy, I didn't really know what to expect on the output screen. And to be honest, having used Beautiful Soup previously, where really there's very little drama on the CLI, when I first used Scrapy, I was kind of overwhelmed with the output that I was seeing on the screen. So yeah, eventually you get used to that, and you kind of you almost get used to seeing the screen flickering and seeing lots of output and trying to sort of pick out whether it's working or not. Depending on how fast your connection is, what you've got your settings, your delay, and how fast your computer is, you may or may not see the output stall and then give you an opportunity to read what it is extracting for you. Quite often you'll see debug in capitals appearing on the screen, and you'll see scraped, and you'll see a timestamp, and hopefully you'll see your containers or your items, your fields that you're extracting. Also, if you watch carefully, you should see, for instance here I'm seeing the page count increase every so often, so it's going 120, 240, 360 and so on. So I know that it's working and it's going through, the next page logic, the navigation logic is working. And because you can see that, you kind of get a feel for how long the overall spider is going to take. Now I know that this has got 3,000 odd results, and I can see 120 going up to, here we go, 3,000 items in results.csv. And so that's the important thing. That's what we wanted to see. Stored CSV feed, 3,000 items in results.csv. Looking for errors. I can't see any errors here, which again is perfect. So I'm just going to look in, where are we? I'm just in Atom already. I can see a results.csv. Just click on that, and on initial inspection that looks perfect. So because that looks good, I'm now going to open up let's go back up to home, Craigslist demo, bin, Craigslist scrape, results.csv, and that will open with LibreOffice. I get the little preview. Again, the preview is good because it just shows you so miscellaneous I was expecting to be empty. Latin long, they are probably going to be empty for the first few results. I think that's because they're not really proper apartments. They're just, I don't know, escaped. We'll see in a second, but I'm not concerned. That there we go. The estate agent or the real estate, what are they called? Realtors, I think. In England we call them estate agents. They're not always the most popular of people, but that's nothing to do with me. There we go. We've got, we're only slightly the way down. Let's drag the scroll bar all the way down, and there we go. 3001. How about that? We've got the date, the URL to the details page, the hood, and longitude, latitude, price, and description. I forget what H was. What was column H? Title. Yeah. The title was, if you remember, that was the text that we extracted from the link. So if we just, I'm just going to reduce that slightly, bring up the original advert. And yeah, the title was the text of the href, if that makes sense. And yeah, there we go. I think let's scroll down a bit because some of them didn't have. Let's go into that one. That's most of the way down this page. So I know some of them didn't have. Well, that one has. So let's try and find this actual one then, shall we? 31.8. Now I'm going to regret doing this because I can't remember how to do find, but Control F, paste in that coordinate, and that is not working, so I'll probably edit that out because I've made myself look stupid. But hopefully you don't think I'm completely stupid, because what I have done is I've scraped Craigslist website real estate, and I've gone through 3,000 listings and extracted price, href, title, hood, link, and we've also extracted the geodata from the second page, and we've used yield 3 times. So if I'll put the link in the description to my webpage where I've described this, and you can yeah, you don't have to watch a video, you can read about it on the webpage. So I hope this has been really interesting. If it's not, then sorry, I'll be back with other stuff soon. What I may do, if anybody's interested, I may see if I can get this to run on my Raspberry Pi. And what I may also do is I may schedule it, and I'll schedule it to run for 7 days maybe, and I'll make a video on that. So I hope that's been interesting. If it hasn't, then well, I think there's plenty of cat videos out there, so yeah, go and find yourself a cat who's actually, there is a good one. There's a cat that sits on the piano and the person plays it. Go and watch that, whatever. See ya later. Thanks for watching. Subscribe. You have to do that if you're a YouTuber. Subscribe. Bye.